Welcome back everyone, it is me your watercolor wizard, and today I'm going to be sharing with you everything to do with texture in watercolor. So this is going to be so exciting because there is some unique textures that you can create in watercolor, and I'm going to show you today exactly how. So let's get into it. One of the sort of paintings that I created this weekend, it's going to become part of this class, was this beautiful loose cactus flowers in a pot. But notice all of this beautiful texture that we have in the background. Now this is not necessarily one of the best watercolor paintings ever. There's a lot wrong with it, and I will show you guys how to fix some of these things later in the class. But I did want to show you guys the beautiful texture that I was able to sort of capture in this painting, and I want to show you guys some of these techniques today. So I've prepared a beautiful piece of watercolor paper, and I sort of found this, what shall we call it, a pad of watercolor in my stash hidden away. I forgot that there's a few more sheets on this pad. So this would be a good example of an actual painting pad that I got, and this one has got a beautiful sort of cover. And remember, I told you guys that it is sealed all the way around, so it stretches the paper for you, ready to go already. But if you will notice at the top, there is a little bit of a gap there, and that is exactly where you would insert your tool in order to separate one page at the top from the rest. So here you actually have one of those. So for this basic introduction to watercolor, I want to bring forth a few materials that we will need. So I'm going to use my magic wand. Now I've got here some coarse sea salt, and I've got here some fine rock salt. I really want to encourage you to use different kinds of salt to see what effect you can get out of it. I also know you get some flaky salt, and that's really going to give you some of the most spectacular sort of textures when we play with salt. So we're going to use these crystals to create some texture on our page. So I think what I'm going to do, let's mix up some color here. So you can just take a page out of your watercolor stash to do this exercise with. And basically what I want you to do is I want you just to create a little bit of a wash. And I'm just going to mix this purple here. I'm just going to use my dark theme purple. You can use literally any color. And I want you just to create a nice wash on your page. Now I've already taped down some areas here so that we can sort of see the difference between these, what shall we call them, techniques. There we go. So just lay down a basic wash, and what you're looking for when you apply your salt is you want a little bit of a shiny surface. So I'm just going to turn my page here so you guys can hopefully see the reflection of the water on my surface. And what we have here is not a puddle of water, but there is a nice glossy kind of surface. Now I'm going to use some coarse salt at the top, and I'm going to use some of my finer salt here at the bottom so that we can basically see the difference between these textures that it is going to create in the watercolor. And while we carry on with our other techniques, we will begin to see the effects of the salt as this test strip dries. Very exciting. Okay. Right, so the next one that we've got here is for splatter, and you can also use your water spray. I sort of have this fine water mister, but I'm going to just use splatter. I'll use a bit of spray on one part of it. Now let's mix a different color, just because we can, right? I'm just going to go for this beautiful blue. There we go. I think it is phthalo blue. And let's just also create a nice wash that we can all see very nicely. Now for this one, I'm going to ask you guys to just wait a little bit before you add the splatter. You want this sort of wash of yours to not be dry, but also not sopping wet anymore. Because if it's sopping wet, I think an example here, it's like the water will pool together in a little bit of a puddle. So what you sort of waiting for is you want to be able to see a satin sort of finish on your wash. So it's not super glossy anymore. You're waiting for it to sort of give you a bit of a more of a satin finish rather than very wet. Because if it's still very wet and you're going to add splatter to it, you will still get the effect, but it might just be too much water for your sort of composition and what you want to do. So if you want to add this technique, it's best to sort of add the water splatter or the spray of your water gun closer towards the time just before this wash is starting to dry. So just give it a bit of a moment. And while that is sort of getting there, our next technique here is going to be all about wax. So I've got a wax crayon here, a white wax crayon. You can also use a candle wax to draw with. And this is sometimes a nice sort of, what shall we call it? A way to preserve white or a pristine sort of area, maybe on a floral design where you want the light area where the light is hitting the petals to maybe just stay white. So you might not see it now, but I'm going to do a few lines here. Our wash is ready here on the other side. So I'm going to take clean water. I'm going to just protect this little exercise on that side, and let's splatter. Just throw in some water, and here at the bottom I'm going to do a light mist, not too much. So you will see where the spray hit our little wash is going to have a fine particle effect, and where we splattered a lot of water we will see beautiful blooms. Okay, so now that I've drawn my wax lines here, just pretend it's sort of the outlines of a rose. And with watercolor you sort of tend to lean to the side. That's what I'm doing when I'm doing this. I'm just trying to see what it is that I'm creating on my paper here. So I'm gonna create a bit of a, what should we call it? A wash. Now let's pick another color. Let's maybe go for, let's go for this magenta. And I'm sort of just mixing it in this puddle here. Let's add some water. Okay. Now watch what's going to happen when we sort of do our wash over the wax crayon. Because the wax crayon is made of wax, it will resist the paint. So when you do your wash, and you want areas that sort of won't disturb the paper, then you can play with a wax crayon or just candle wax. That is a nice sort of way to give you a little bit of a resist technique there. We're going to allow that to dry. Right. Now for this fourth technique, you're going to need some plastic. So let me just organize that. Okay, we've got some plastic here. Thank you. I really just took a plastic bag and I cut it open, and this is really more than you really require for this little exercise. But just have some plastic handy. And what we're going to do is we're going to create another wash. And maybe this time I'll play with this Viridian green. Let's add that to the blue. That looks nice. So you sort of want enough water there to do a nice wash. And we're going to apply our wash. And by the way, this paper is hot press paper, so we've got a very smooth surface, and your choice of paper will also affect the outcome of your exercise. Now you can lay your plastic sheet on your watercolor, and you can even manipulate the paper in a way until you find textures that you are finding pleasing. So what the plastic does is it basically resists the paint, and it sort of pushes it away. And you've got areas where the plastic is clinging to the paint and the water, and it's sort of putting it into beautiful pockets or compartments. But you do need this to sort of dry in order to, see the full effect. So I will leave that to dry. But we can begin to see all of the beautiful different kind of textures that you can create. And these are just 4 of the sort of mainstream techniques out there. I'm sure you can invent some of your own ways to create texture and movement in one of your washes with watercolor. And if I can come back to the sort of main painting that I did yesterday, actually what I did was, it was quite an intimidating wash. I didn't really mix enough paint for this entire background, and I sort of was testing out my new brushes and new paper that I was working on, so I didn't quite know what I was expecting. And I was also very careful to work around my painting, because I did the background basically after I painted my beautiful blooms. And my intention was to create some texture, but also maybe possibly to create some problem areas on this painting that we can come back to later at another episode, to sort of work out what you could possibly do to save a painting if you've done a painting and you love what you did, but there's some problem areas. So we will look into that later. But what basically happened was I realized that I didn't have a nice cohesive flow in my background. And for me, a solution was to add texture, to sort of make it deliberately more textured. If you look at this dark area in the background, I sort of wanted a nice wash, but in the end, it sort of separated and created some hard edges for me at the wrong place that I didn't really enjoy. And when I started to come over it with another bit of a wash to try and sort of correct it, it started to really lift up my color, and it just didn't look very pretty. So for me, a solution was to just add texture to that. So I splattered in some water, I added some salt. Here I also splattered in quite a bit of water, creating beautiful blooms. And suddenly, when this all dried, it just looked more intentional. It looked like it was supposed to be a textured background. And it was one sort of trick that I used in order to keep the focus on the flowers and the subject that I'm painting, rather than the background that didn't work out. So we will come back to this painting a little bit later during this course, and we will deal with some of the problems that we had there. So I would love for you to add a comment to this video and tell me where you think you could possibly use these 4 texturizing techniques in your watercolor painting and which one you are most excited to try out. So drop that in a comment below this video. I would love to hear what you think about it. And I'm going to allow this to dry fully, and then when I come back I'll show you guys what effect we sort of achieved and how you sort of get rid of the salt on your paper and how to go forward from this point. So I'll see you guys just now. Welcome back. So let's see what has happened here. Let's get rid of this plastic. There we go. Save that for another day. Now, I think this is mostly dry, so this can be fun to just sort of play with and see what else we can do with it. So I want to encourage you to maybe do a little bit of a sample strip like this and then to maybe see whatever shapes you see in it if you want to enhance it and play with it. Otherwise, it's just techniques that you can introduce into your paintings wherever you feel like you need a bit of texture or some added assistance to create the effect that you want to create. Now, normally with the salt crystals, I just take a tissue and my little dustbin on the side, and I'm basically, you don't have to be scared, it's not going to ruin your watercolor. Just make sure that it's completely dry. So I'm just going to get rid of the salt quickly. There we go. And whatever salt remains, or if there's little fine crystals on there, sometimes it just adds to the beauty of the whole effect. So let's maybe just play with this a little bit more and see what happens if we enhance our little painting here. So let's go for maybe a bit of a deeper pink here. A little bit more dramatic. And just pretend that we have our little rose going here, just so that you guys can see why I think this is such a cool textural effect. Just adding some depth or another layer to our watercolor to create some excitement. I mean, that's really cool. Let's look at this splatter sort of painting that almost looks like clouds or even a tree for me. Really, that can be so dynamic. So maybe what we can do is let's play with our dark blue here. Now you guys don't have to do this, I'm just showing you what's possible. Let's say for example this is a tree and I'm just going to play with my blues here, and we have our branches coming through. I sometimes like to just intuitively respond to my paintings and just see whatever I can see in it and what would enhance sort of the whole visual effect for me. Just interrupt the stems here a little bit and just give some character. Just playfully, let's add some grasses here. I really didn't plan sort of the effect that I wanted to go for, but this is what I see there. I'm going to just use my tissue to just pick up some of that intensity of paint there. And maybe let's switch to another medium. Where is my watercolor pencil? what would happen if we play with our watercolor pencils, right? So maybe let's go for a darker green. And this can be a fun exercise where you maybe use a pencil or another color or even an ink pen, and just outline some of your shapes and just accentuate them and make them a little bit more present and deliberate on your page. Now my paper here isn't 100% dry, but I did want to show you guys what is possible. You can really have a lot of fun and maybe even create abstract art with your watercolor. Abstract art is definitely not just reserved for, oils and acrylics. Watercolor should not be underestimated. There is amazing effects that you can create with your watercolor. That's really super cool. And I mean, then you can also layer these in layers. You can let it dry completely and add another layer to it like we did just now. Whatever tickles your fancy, that's really up to you. So the main sort of idea that we have here today is that you can, play with your watercolors and you can add effects to it and you can add layers to it. You don't have to be too scared to get in there with another layer. And it's also a lot of fun for me just to take off my masking sort of situation here, my masking tape. This is just my washi tape that I did before the time because I wanted to have clear separation between these shapes. There we go. And there you have it, you guys. Just a quick, easy introduction to some watercolor techniques and texturizing effects that you can create with watercolor. So I'm really excited to see what you guys are going to do and just play with these techniques and see what effect you can create and what you can do with these effects. So I'm really eager to hear which one of these is your favorite, and do share some progress photos with me. If you've played with these techniques, you want to share it with me in a comment below this video or on our Patreon group or also on our Facebook group, The Creative Heart. So I'm really excited to see what you guys will do with this and how you will interpret it in your world. So I will see you guys in the next episode, and then we will play with more watercolor techniques for beginners. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys then. Bye bye for now.